BY percent C 2% A 0% 20 C HANDRASHEKA R percent 20 S R I N I V A S A N percent 20 ATLETICO percent 20 MADRID percent 20 BOSS percent 20 DIEGO percent 20 SIMEONE percent 20 TALKS percent 20 UP percent 20 high S percent 20 CHLSEA percent 20 COUNTERPART percent 20 AHAD percent 20 OF percent 20 THEIR percent 20 CHAMPIONS percent 20 LEAGUE percent 20 GROUP percent 20 STAGE percent 20 CLASH percent 20 AT percent 20 THE percent 20 NEW percent 20 WANDA percent 20 METROPOLITANO percent 20 STADIUM percent 20 IM percent 20 Madrid percent 20 SINCE percent 20 HE percent 20 TOK percent 20 CHARG percent 20 OF percent 20 Atletico percent 20 DIEGO percent 20 S IMEONE percent 20 HAS percent 20 CHALLENGED percent 20 THE percent 20 REAL percent 20 MADRID percent 20 AND percent 20 BARCELONA percent E2 percent 80 percent 99 S percent 20 dominant CE percent 20 OF percent 20 LA percent 20 Liga DOC percent 20 DEFDNDING percent 20 IN percent 20 NUMBERS percent 20 IS percent 28 percent 20 NEW percent 20 DEEZER percent 20 ORIGINALS percent 20 FOOTBALL percent 20 podcast percent 20 CREATED percent 20 BY percent 20 SQUACADOC percent 20 LISTEM percent 20 TO percent 20 THE percent 20 LATEST percent 20 EPISODE percent 20 AND percent 20 SVUBSCRIB percent 20 TO percent 20 THE percent 20 PODCAST percent 20 ON percent 20 DEEZER percent 20 AND percent 20 iTunes doc percent 20 THE percent 20 FORMER percent 20 ARGENTINA percent 20 INTERNATIONAL percent 20 LED percent 20 THM percent 22 percent 20 THE percent 200 2014 percent 20 SPANISH percent 20 LEAGUE percent 20 TITLE percent 20% E2 percent 80% 93% 20 THE percent 20 FIRST percent 20 TIME percent 20 IM percent 20 A percent 20 DECADE percent 20 THAT percent 20 NEITHER percent 20 REAL percent 20 NOR percent 20 BARCELONA percent 20 FINISHED percent 20 TOP percent 20 OF percent 20 THE percent 20 TABL percent 20% E2% 80% 93% 20 AND percent 20 TWO percent 20 CHAMPIONS percent 20 LEAGUE percent 20 FINALS percent 20 IM percent 20 THREE percent 20 years dot percent 20 THERE percent 20 AREM percent E2% 80% 99 T percent 20 MANY percent 20 IN percent 20 THE percent 20 WORLD percent 20 WHO percent 20 CAN percent 20 BOAST percent 20 T HAT percent 20 KIND percent 20 OF percent 20 record percent 20 BUT percent 20 SIMEONE percent 20 INSISTS percent 20 CHELSEA percent E2 percent 80% 99S percent 20 NEW percent 20 BOSS percent 20% E2 percent 80% 93% 20 ANTONIO percent 20 CONTE percent 20% E2 percent 80% 93% 20 is percent 20 the percent 20 better percent 20 manager dot percent 20 Simeon percent 20 according percent 20 to percent 20 as percent c2 percent a0 said percent 20 percent e2 percent 80 percent 9 cthis percent 20 chlsa percent 20 is percent 20 d f d r d n t percent 20 from percent 202,014 dot percent 20 I percent 20 am percent 20 a percent 20 big percent 20 fam percent 20 they percent 20 work percent 20 collectibely percent 20 with percent 20 bala and ce percent 20 and percent 20 last percent 20 seaso and percent 20 they percent 20 wom percent 20 the percent 20 ligui percent 20 im percent 20 the percent 20 ma and ner percent 20 that percent 20 they percent 20 did dot percent 20% to 2% 80% 9 cthey percent 20 are percent 20 a percent 20 vry percent 20 tough percent 20 opponent percent 20 with h percent 20 a percent 20 manager percent 20 with percent 20 the percent 20 ability percent 20 to percent 20 tell percent 20 them percent 20 what percent 20 he percent 21 stop percent 2% 80% 90% 20 chlsa percent 20 60% 20 qarabag percent 20 ft percent 20 shots percent 20,167 pass percent 20 accuracy percent 2086% 84% 25 cha and ces percent 20 created percent 2093 posssion percent 2053 g percent 25% 20 big percent 20 win percent 20 for percent 20 a and tonio percent 20 contes percent 20 side dot percent 20 pic dot twitter dot compiyqaw 61 te percent 20% e2% 80% 94% 20 squawka percent 20 foot ball percent 20 at squawka percent 20 sdptember percent 20 12% 202,017% 20 nevertheless percent 20 simeone percent 20 WILL percent 20 AHAVE percent 20 HAPPY percent 20 MEMORIES percent 20 OF percent 20 PLAYING percent 20 THE percent 20 PREMIER percent 20 LEAGUE percent 20 champions dot percent 20 ATLETICO percent 20 BEAT percent 20 THE percent 20 BLUES percent 2031 percent 20 IN percent 20 the percent 20 SEMIFINAL percent 20 OF percent 20 THE percent 202,001,314% 20 EUROPEAN percent 20 season percent 20 WITH percent 20 A percent 20 SECOND percent 20 HALF percent 20 GOAL percent 20 FROM percent 20 A percent 20 CERTAIN percent 20 DIEGO percent 20 Costa Doc percent 20 THE percent 2028 YEAROLD percent 20 WILL percent 20 PLAY percent 20 NO percent 20 PART percent 20 IM percent 20 THIS percent 20 FIXTURE percent 20 BAGH percent 20 AFTER percent 20 AGREING percent 20 A percent 20 MOVE percent 20 TO percent 20 RETURM percent 20 TO percent 20 Spain percent 20 AND percent 20 WILL percent 20 PROBABLY percent 20 BE percent 20 watching percent 20 O M% 20 FRO M% 20 THE% 20 stand stock percent 20 AND% 20 SIMEONE% 20 WOULD% 20 NOT% 20 BE% 20 DRAWN% 20 OM% 20 COMMDNTING% 20 IF% 20 the percent 20 CONTROVERSIAL% 20 NATURE% 20 OF% 20 COSTA% E2% 80% 99S% 20 RETURN% 20 TO% 20 MADRID% 20 WOULD% 20 PLAY% 28% 20 PART% 20 IM% 20 THIS% 20 fixture dot% 20 HE% 20 did% 20 however% 20 COMMENT% 20 ON% 20 SIMILARIT IDS% 20 IN% 20 PLAYING% 20 STYLES% 20 BETWEEN% 20 ATLETICO% 20 AND% 20 Chelsea% 20 AND% 20 SAID% 20% E2% 80% 9 CMANY% 20 TEAMS% 20 LOOK% 20 FOR% 20 DIFFERENT% 20 THINGS% 20 TO% 20 GIVE% 20 THEM% 20 THE% 20 CHANCE% 20 TO% 20 WIN.% 20 IM% 20 THE% 20 CASE% 20 OF% 20 Chelsea% 20 WITH% 20 Conte% 20 THEY% 20 ARE% 20 NOT% 20 LIKE% 20 stock% 20 HE% 20 HAS% 20 ALWAYS% 20 PLAYED% 20 THE% 20 SAME% 20 weight.% E2% 80% 90% 20% E2% 80% 9 CTHERE% 20 ARE% 20 SIMILARITIES% 20 IM% 20 TERMS% 20 OF% 20 WORKING% 20 BUT% 20 THEY% 20 ARE% 20 NOT% 20 LIKE% 20 US% 20 BECAUSE% 20 HE% 20 PLAYED% 20 AND% 20 WORKED% 20 M% 20 THE% 20 EXACT% 20 SAME% 20 WAY% 20 IM% 20 HIS% 20 PREVIOUS% 20 Teams% 20 AT% 20 SIENA% 20 AND% 20 80% 20 Juventus.% E2% 80% 90% 20 AND% 20 ASKED% 20 POINT% 20 BLANK% 20 WHO % 20 HE% 20 THOUGHT% 20 WAS% 20 THE% 20 BETTER% 20 OF% 20 THE% 20 TWO% 20 managers% 20 SIMEONE% 20 REPLIED% 20% E2% 80% 9 contact% E2% 80% 90% 20 Chelsea% 20 TRAVEL% 20 TO% 20 SPAIN% 20 ON% 20 THE% 20 B ACK% 20 OF% 28% 2060% 20 HAMMERING% 20 OF% 20 CHAMPIONS% 20 LEAGUE% 20 NUCO MERS% 20 FC% 20 Carbag.% 20 Atletico% 20 Meanwhile% 20 WERE% 20 HELD% 20 TO% 20 A% 20 GOALLESS% 20 DRAW% 20 AWAY% 20 TO% 20 Roma. percent 20 THE percent 20 TWO percent 20 SIDES percent 20 WILL percent 20 FACE percent 20 EACH percent 20 OTHER percent 20 AGAIN percent 20 ON percent 20 DUCEMBER percent 205 percent 20 AT percent 20 Stamford D percent 20 Bridge dot percent 20 however percent 20 WITH percent 20 SIMEONE percent E2 percent 80 percent 99 S percent 20 SIDE percent 20 DUE percent 20 TO percent 20 PLAY percent 20 BACKTOBACK percent 20 GAMES percent 20 AGAINST percent 20 QARA BAG percent 20 AFTER percent 20 THIS percent 20 TI percent 20 CONTE percent 20 WILL percent 20 KNOW percent 20 HE percent 20 HAS percent 20 TO percent 20 PICK percent 20 UP percent 20 AT percent 20 least percent 20 A percent 20 POINT percent 20 TO percent 20 MAINTAIN percent 20 THIS percent 20 EARLY percent 20 ADVANTAGE percent 20 OVER percent 20 Atletico